Greetings from Wisdom Words, a peaceful place to pause and reflect. One story at a time, we examine timeless teachings about life, serenity, and purpose here. So, pause, inhale, and let's get started. Attempting to win over everyone is a tiring experience. Here, you bend slightly. There, you undergo some alteration. When you don't want to, you agree. When you wish to remain silent, you smile. And eventually, you begin to see that you've changed into a version of yourself that no longer feels authentic. Isn't it a calm sort of loneliness? That's because, no matter how many people think well of you, a tiny voice inside of you constantly asks, "But what about me?" Your truth is in that voice. Additionally, it becomes more difficult to identify your true self the more you disregard it. The origin of the habit of people-pleasing. Most of us don't wake up one day and choose to live our lives based on the opinions of others. It frequently begins in childhood and progresses gradually. Perhaps you discovered that being good meant making other people content. Perhaps you received more praise for your quiet than for your candor. Or perhaps you noticed that love appeared to have requirements, so you adjusted, thinking that being liked by others was a cost of acceptance. The drive to please is actually a survival skill that has outlived its usefulness rather than a weakness. It is the mind's tendency to think, perhaps I will finally find safety if I ensure everyone's happiness. However, that safety eventually turns into a prison. The approval illusion. The odd thing about attempting to please everyone is this. In reality, it never works. Opinions vary among people. They change their moods. What brings joy to one may bring disappointment to another. As a result, you find yourself constantly chasing acceptance like a moving target, never able to achieve it. You can be the sweetest peach in the world, and someone will still hate peaches, goes an old proverb. Regardless of your generosity, intelligence, or kindness, someone will misinterpret you. And that's all right. This is because you are the one who determines your own value, not a group. A tale, the mask and the mirror. Allow me to share a brief tale with you. A young artist named Claire used to exist. She adored painting, bright hues, sloppy brushwork, and intense passion. She started painting what she believed people wanted, perfect landscapes, clear lines, safe choices, after her teacher informed her one day that her style was too chaotic. She began selling her paintings. Her discipline was commended. However, she always felt nothing when she looked at her work. She whispered softly as she stood in front of the mirror one evening. "I'm invisible, but I'm successful." Years passed before she understood that success without genuineness is like clapping in a room full of strangers. Something changed when she eventually returned to painting the things she liked. She enjoyed it, but not everyone did. And that was sufficient for the first time in years. Attempting to please everyone comes at an emotional cost. You begin to lose small parts of yourself when you live your life to please other people. You conceal your opinions. You suppress your instincts. You only agree to stay out of trouble. However, claiming to be peaceful isn't actually peace, it's pressure masquerading as serenity. You're carrying it all by yourself, even if you may believe you're maintaining harmony. And it grows heavier the longer you do it. This continues until you realize that you are the most difficult individual to satisfy. Many people reach a breaking point at that point, a silent tiredness that murmurs, "I no longer even recognize myself." Pause for reflection. So allow me to ask you a question. When was the last time you refused anything without saying sorry? How often have you done something just because you wanted to, not because it pleased other people? When was the last time you made decisions grounded in your own values instead of out of concern for letting someone down? Even though these moments may seem little, they are actually minor acts of self-discovery. The moment of change. When you stop seeking approval and begin seeking alignment, you start the path back to yourself. Will they like me is not the first question you ask. However, does this seem correct to me? And everything is changed by that one inquiry. Saying no with love replaces saying yes out of fear. When someone only sees what they want to see, you stop trying to explain your value. You understand that not everyone is deserving of your energy. Your demand for other people's approval will decrease as you become more honest with yourself. An actual case, the silent resignation. Consider a person who previously had the guts to defy what other people expected of them. Perhaps a friend who quit their steady work to launch a small business. Or a parent who, after years of raising children, decided to return to school. People may have initially questioned their choice. They eventually achieved peace, though not because everyone agreed with them. Growth doesn't always appear to be success. It appears to be sincerity. It appears to be at rest. It appears to be a quiet rather than an explanation. The takeaway: trying to please everyone will never lead you to your true self. Because everyone is not a part of your skin. They don't carry your dreams, experience your anxieties, or hear your thoughts. You do. Therefore, quit modifying yourself to fit into areas that you no longer need. Don't wait for approval to be genuine. You won't have to shrink for those who genuinely care about you. And you were never home to those who do. Final thought: being everything for everyone was never your purpose. Being someone for yourself was your destiny. And that's sufficient, at last. In the next chapter, we'll discuss reconnecting with yourself and reclaiming your identity after years of living for others. Because when you cease attempting to satisfy everyone, you must inquire within, who am I truly? There is an odd silence that ensues when you finally give up attempting to please everyone. For a long time, you made decisions based on what other people thought would make them pleased, proud, or impressed. What remains once all those voices have subsided is something new, your own. It feels empty at first. But in reality, that void is space. There is space for you to reinvent yourself as your true self, not as the person the world expected you to be. The missing link. You see, we become disconnected from our inner compass when we spend years living for other people. We lose sight of our passions, our weaknesses, and our core beliefs. Our no feels risky, while our yes becomes instinctive. Every reflection in the room reflects how other people view you, but none of them represent how you see yourself. It's like being in a room full of mirrors. Leaving that space, even if it means standing by yourself for a bit, is necessary to reconnect with the true you. Regaining the ability to hear your voice is the first act of emancipation. Acquiring the ability to listen inward. The majority of people only listen to themselves. They follow social media, trends, and friends' recommendations, but they never pause to consider their own opinions. Begin modestly. Take note of your feelings in everyday circumstances. Do some talks make you feel heavier or lighter? Do you accept plans that you're secretly terrified of? To maintain harmony, do you conceal your opinions? You move farther away from yourself each time you disregard your feelings. However, each time you respect your emotions, even in small ways, you begin to regain your self-confidence. And regaining confidence in your voice is the essence of self-connection. The garden that forgot its color, a story. Let's stop for a tale. A garden that bloomed in every hue once existed. It was alive with bluebells, yellow marigolds, and red roses. One day, however, the garden heard conversation. The red flowers are too bright, other people remarked. The blue ones don't match the green, others remarked. The garden tried to change slowly. The yellow turned light, the crimson softened, and soon all the flowers began to have the same appearance. It ceased to be noticeable. And then it ceased to grow altogether. The result of trying to please everyone is that you lose your soul's color. Allowing those colors to return, even if not everyone approves of their appearance, is essential to re-establishing a connection with oneself. The rediscovery process. Regaining your identity is a gradual process rather than an abrupt event. I don't know who I am right now, but I'm willing to find out, it says. Doing what makes you feel like yourself should be your first step. Do what makes you happy, not what other people think you should do. It might be red again. Perhaps it's going on a walk by yourself without your phone. Writing something that no one else will ever read could be the answer. What counts is that it's honest, regardless of what it is. Every act of integrity is a tiny defiance of your socially prescribed identity. The fear of misunderstanding. Reconnecting with oneself can be difficult because some people may not like it. They may claim that you have changed. They may pull away. And that hurts, particularly if those individuals were formerly vital to you. Here's the reality, though. Not everyone will accompany you as you mature. The version of you that existed to appease other people was the foundation of some relationships. And the relationships that relied on that version will also wane. It's all right. You're losing the appearance of affection, not the actual thing. Pause for reflection. Consider this. What aspects of yourself did you conceal to make other people feel at ease? Whose approval do you still believe you need to feel worthy of? And how would life be if you didn't need that anymore? Uncomfortable inquiries are the first step toward true growth. However, the answers free you. Example from real life, the woman who quit trying to explain herself. A woman named Emily used to apologize for everything, according to a story I once heard. She apologized if she was late. She lowered her voice if she didn't agree. She spent 10 minutes explaining why she couldn't reply yes if she answered no. She once found herself apologizing for not enjoying a film that her friends were really fond of. She realized that she was acting politely rather than living a life of integrity. So she silently vowed to herself that she would no longer needlessly apologize. Her friends initially believed she was growing cold. But gradually, a lovely thing occurred. She regained her confidence. Her no stopped being defensive and instead became calm. Her laughter returned to reality. She found her way back. She didn't lose herself. The formula for Reconnect. Although there isn't a perfect manual for self-discovery, the following fact can be helpful. Honesty is the foundation of clarity. Boundaries lead to peace. It is discomfort that leads to growth. You'll inevitably become closer to your true self if you continue to present yourself with those three qualities. There is no need for you to find yourself in the world. All you have to do is return home to the person you were before you began looking for acceptance. The takeaway: while acting for the audience, you cannot find your true self. Silence, the little times when you choose boundaries over guilt, truth over comfort, and serenity over popularity, is where you discover it. Being amiable is not a requirement for proving your value. You demonstrate it by being genuine. Once you start living authentically, those who love you for you will find you. Final thought: perhaps you don't have to start over. Perhaps all you need to do is recall who you were before society pushed you to be someone else. The real person, the one behind all the acting, is still out there, just waiting to be seen. Reconnecting with yourself doesn't mean excluding others, so in the upcoming chapter, we'll look at how to set limits while maintaining an open heart. It entails discovering a way to love without losing who you are. You start to notice where your energy leaks, which is an intriguing phenomenon that happens when you start to reconnect with who you really are. You become aware of how frequently you say yes when you really mean no, or how exhausted you are after having particular discussions. You come to the realization that protecting that individual is just as important as figuring out who you are. Boundaries then become important. But let's get things straight out of the way. Walls are not boundaries. You have power over the locks on those doors. Instead of pushing individuals away, they facilitate healthy connections amongst the proper people. The true significance of boundaries. Boundaries are frequently perceived as being harsh or self-serving, as if we are excluding others. However, true boundaries are loving actions. I care about you, but I also care about myself, they remark. Setting limits does not imply a lack of affection. It indicates a more intelligent love. Consistently sacrificing your serenity is not a sign of love, but rather a disguised act of kindness. Setting limits allows you to be compassionate without fading. The silent strength of no. At first, saying no can be difficult, particularly if you've centered your entire existence on being amiable. You may be concerned that others may perceive you as ungrateful, aloof, or impolite. In actuality, however, every no that results from respect for oneself is a yes to something more significant. Saying no does not imply rejection. To provide the greatest version of yourself to the proper things, you are safeguarding your time, your energy, and your peace of mind. Being honest when you disappoint someone is preferable to keeping your anger to yourself. Anecdote: the constantly accepting friend. Let's discuss Michael. When it came to helping friends move, covering additional shifts, or providing rides at midnight, he was the person that everyone could rely on. He never refused. But he was disintegrating in private. He would return home weary and angry, wondering why no one ever came to get him. After spending the third consecutive weekend aiding a friend, he sat in his car one day and came to the following realization. He was acting out of fear, not out of kindness. Fearful of losing favor. Fearful of being perceived as self-centered. He changed a little that day. Before committing to anything, he made the decision to let me think about it. And his world began to change gradually. Some people respected his decision. Some didn't. However, Michael discovered tranquility, which was more valuable than approval. He learned from boundaries that being kind doesn't require being available all the time. Why it's so tough? Because it goes against our upbringing. Setting limits can be awkward. Perhaps you were taught as a child that saying no is impolite. Perhaps you learned that love requires exceeding expectations to ensure the happiness of others. Here's the reality, though. Self-erasure is not necessary for healthy partnerships. It's convenience, not love, if someone only appreciates you when you're easy to use. Boundaries help distinguish between the two. When you start establishing limits, those who gain from your lack of them will most likely push back. However, that soreness is an indication that you are making progress by altering the pattern. Pause for reflection. Consider this. Why do you continue to grant access to the person who consumes your energy the most? Because you haven't learned to say no. What aspects of your life feel overstuffed? How might things change if you focused on upholding your boundaries rather than frequently articulating them? Sometimes just one simple sentence might lead to the freedom you seek. I'm no longer available for that. Limits and love in balance. Setting boundaries is about establishing clarity, not distance. You may state, "That doesn't work for me," even if you hold a deep affection for someone. You can choose to rest while still caring. You can choose not to repeat the same pattern even after you have forgiven. Because they value your serenity, those who genuinely care for you will respect your boundaries. If they don't respect your boundaries, you have just discovered something important about the relationship. The intention is not to exclude anyone. Its purpose is to provide room for interactions that are honest, respectful, and feel reciprocal. Example from real life: the manager who quit responding at midnight. There is a tale of Lisa, a woman who oversaw a little business. Her phone rang non-stop, with demands and late-night emails. She believed that being accessible at all times made her an effective leader. However, being constantly accessible simply made her feel resentful and burned out. For the first time in years, she switched off her phone one weekend. The world didn't collapse as she had anticipated. It was her energy that altered instead. On Monday, she returned composed, clear-headed, and focused. She established a straightforward rule going forward: no work communications after 6 p.m. After initially objecting, some co-workers finally followed her example. Setting boundaries gives others permission to do the same, which is their quiet power. How to set limits without feeling bad. Begin modestly. You don't have to tell everyone about your boundaries. Simply begin to practice them. Here are some tactful ways to get started. Before responding yes, pause. "I'll get back to you," you can remark if something doesn't feel right. Calm honesty might take the place of excessive explanation. Keep in mind that no is a complete sentence. You owe no one your unwavering consent. You owe it to yourself to be genuine. Your boundaries will eventually become more like anchors, steady, rooted, and compassionate rather than shields. The takeaway: those who genuinely care about you won't require you to exert yourself for their comfort. They will honor the composed, grounded, and authentic version of you. Setting boundaries marks the start of an honest connection, not its conclusion. They permit peace to endure, love to flourish, and respect to flourish. Therefore, don't be scared to create boundaries. They are frames for freedom, not walls. Final thought: keeping your peace is precious, not selfish. You cannot find yourself constantly giving, nor can you pour from an empty heart. Allow your yes to indicate yes and your no to indicate no. That's how you create a life that feels like yours at last. After learning to set boundaries, the next step is to believe that your voice matters. In the upcoming chapter, we'll discuss how to regain confidence after years of people-pleasing. Your voice begins to wane after years of striving to please everyone. You lose the ability to trust your intuition. You question everything, including your feelings, your desires, and your words. You haven't lost your voice exactly. It has simply been buried beneath years of remorse, uncertainty, and habit, but it still exists. The goal of this chapter is to teach you how to regain that voice. Rediscovering who you are requires not only understanding who you are, but also having the self-assurance to be that person aloud. The negative effects of self-doubt. Because it teaches you that other people's opinions are more important than your own, people-pleasing gradually undermines confidence. You put an end to the question, "What feels good for me?" and begin to inquire, "What will win their approval?" Your fear of being judged causes you to start filtering your truth. However, being loud, brash, or brave is not a sign of confidence. Being anchored means understanding that your opinions, feelings, and decisions are right, even if no one else shares them. Seeking acceptance won't help you regain your confidence. You restore it by repeatedly fulfilling tiny self-promises until you feel comfortable trusting your voice once more. Little promises have great power. Begin modestly. Your confidence starts to return when you promise yourself that you will accomplish something and you do it. Perhaps it's getting up 15 minutes early to sit quietly. Saying no to a single commitment that drains your energy could be the solution. Perhaps it's putting your ideas on paper without revising them. Every action you take demonstrates to your mind that I can rely on myself. Gradually, that inner trust replaces the old practice of seeking approval from others. Being flawless does not necessarily translate into confidence. It results from consistency. Narrative: the woman who ignored her thoughts. A woman named Rachel is the subject of one of the stories. She used to adjust to every circumstance, whether it was at work, with friends, or even in romantic relationships. She shared someone's taste in a certain band. She agreed mindlessly if a group didn't like a film. "What do you like?" her therapist asked her one day. She was also unable to respond. She was shaken by that quiet. She became aware that she had based her entire life on stolen viewpoints. To determine her feelings, she began experimenting by reading various books, sampling cuisines she had never tried, and watching movies by herself. And gradually her voice came back. It wasn't noisy. There was no drama. However, it was hers. And that was the decisive factor. The fear of making a mistake. The dread of being incorrect, rejected, or ridiculed is a major factor in people losing confidence in their voices. But we learn by making mistakes. Authenticity cannot be developed without making mistakes. Recovery, not perfection, is what builds confidence. "I got that wrong, but I still trust myself to continue growing," it says. Your voice begins to sound natural again, warm, genuine, and human when you stop striving to be perfect. And people do pay attention to that type of voice. Pause for reflection. Consider this. When did you begin to question your beliefs? Whose endorsement do you still consider more authoritative than your own? What would happen if you allowed yourself to think that your viewpoint is important as well? In actuality, you can be confident without seeming certain. All you have to do is sound sincere. Redefining self-belief. We frequently mistake confidence for domination, as if it means always knowing the perfect response or ruling a room. True confidence, however, is more subdued. It's the ability to state, "This is what I think," without requiring consensus from everyone. It's the ability to turn away from something that doesn't fit, even if it means being by yourself. It's the ability to admit, "I don't know yet," without feeling guilty. Confidence stems from having faith in your ability to handle future challenges, not from possessing complete knowledge. An actual case: the author who discovered his voice. A writer named Daniel used to write solely what he believed readers wanted to hear, according to a story I once read. The stories he wrote were safe and predictable. Predictable conclusions. He felt hollow, yet they sold well. He penned a heartfelt piece on loneliness, loss, and the need to fit in one day. His publisher warned him that it might not sell. Still, he let it go. Because it was honest rather than flawless, it became the most impactful thing he had ever written. For the first time, people were drawn to the reality behind the narrative rather than the story itself. Speaking from your true voice has that effect, it echoes. The function of quietness. Rebuilding confidence sometimes involves listening more intently rather than saying more. This means concentrating on your own thoughts sufficiently to truly hear the truth. There are a lot of opinions and noise in the world. However, quiet has a way of revealing the truth. True confidence begins when you learn to trust the quiet times, during which no one is looking, confirming, liking, or sharing. In silence, noise-dependent confidence will crumble. Silence inspires confidence that can stand any place. How to get better at speaking in your own voice. Here are some strategies to restore confidence in your voice. Hold off on agreeing. Do I really believe this? Ask. Uncensored journal. Write what feels true rather than what sounds right. Even if your voice trembles, speak. With use, authenticity increases. Honor modest deeds of integrity. Every truth you express is a step closer to liberation. You simply need to remain authentic. There is no necessity to attempt to persuade others. The takeaway. Remembering who you were before you began doubting yourself is more important for regaining confidence than changing into someone else. You hushed that voice? It was always there. It has been eagerly awaiting your approval to come back. When you stop questioning, will they like this, you'll know it's back. And begin to inquire, does this seem accurate to me? Your life begins to sound like you again at that point. Final thought. Being flawless does not bring confidence. You discover it by being truthful, fearlessly, gently, and constantly. Your voice counts. You'll discover that it was never lost, only unheard, if you begin to trust it once more. We'll discuss peace in the last chapter, including how to maintain your integrity even when people don't share it. Once you have found yourself, the true challenge lies in maintaining that tranquility in a noisy environment. Once you begin to discover your voice, life begins to make more sense. You make decisions based on your intuition. You establish limits. You re-establish your true self. The world's noise, however, is an additional obstacle that never goes away. Opinions will continue to exist. Others will misconstrue your actions. People will challenge your decisions. Additionally, your inner critic may still be the loudest at times. Staying calm shows that you know how to protect what matters, not that you don't care. The noise is back. The world won't end abruptly, even if you outgrow people-pleasing. Co-workers, friends, family, and social media all appear to have opinions about how you should think, feel, and live. If you're not careful, all that noise may bring back your old habit of seeking acceptance. Avoiding the noise is not the goal of peace. The key is to learn how to avoid taking it in. It's about maintaining your composure in the face of a spinning environment. The power of silence. True peace is quiet, consistent, and intensely personal. It is neither ostentatious nor noisy. It's when you cease responding to the world around you. This occurs when you learn to refrain from defending yourself. When others fail to comprehend your choices, simply smile and proceed without providing an explanation. Silence is power. Furthermore, the world hardly ever teaches it, as it changes you rather than impresses others. Narrative, the river and the man. A man who lived next to a roaring river is the subject of an old tale. He would sit by the edge every morning and take in the sounds of the trees creaking, the wind howling, and the ocean smashing. It overwhelmed him at first. However, as the years went by, he started to hear something different. There was a pattern, a constant current that remained constant beneath the cacophony. He came to see that serenity was the capacity to observe what is constant beneath noise, not the absence of it. That's also how life operates. There will always be noise in the world. However, you can discover your current if you learn to listen more intently, beneath the assumptions, expectations, and opinions. You're composed. Your truth. When you're not understandable, you'll realize that not everyone will comprehend your peace when you quit living your life to satisfy other people. They will think it's distance. They'll label it haughtiness or conceit. The fact is, though, that you are simply no longer performing. you've discovered that it's possible to have a strong affection for someone and not live your life for their approval. You can leave the mayhem guilt-free. You can still wish them well even if you declare, "I'm not available for that energy anymore." Being authentic is more important than being superior to others. On the inside, peace feels like freedom, yet to the outside world, it frequently appears as silence. Pause for reflection. Consider this. When you're making a decision, whose voice still rings in your head? Even in silence, whose favor do you still seek? And how would it feel to spend an entire day living solely for your own tranquility? You can see where your freedom still lies by answering those questions. Protecting your personal space. Peace is a daily choice, not something you discover once and hold on to forever. Additionally, it becomes stronger with practice. Your inner space is sacred, so protect it as such. You have power over what you allow into your life, but not over how other people behave. Not all messages are worthy of a response. Not all arguments are worth your time and effort. Not all invitations are worthy of your yes. One of the most effective ways to show respect for oneself is to remain silent. Example from real life, the musician who selected silence. I once read about Aaron, a musician who achieved the pinnacle of his career, complete with tours, accolades, and notoriety. However, the cacophony surrounding him became intolerable. Everyone desired more of his energy, time, counsel, and attention. Though rarely seen, he was constantly surrounded. Thus, one day, he left everything behind. He relocated to a tiny lakeside cabin. No crowd, no timetable, no internet. Simply be silent. He was initially confused. Slowly, though, songs began to come back to him, not for the world, but for himself. "I didn't quit music," he subsequently stated in an interview. "I stopped making noise." Giving up what drains your love, rather than what you adore, is the core of calm. The daily peace practice. Peace can be found without a cottage in the woods. All you need are moments. There are times when you disconnect, take a deep breath, and reconnect with yourself. Here are some moderate strategies to maintain your composure in day-to-day life. Silently begin your morning. Take 5 minutes to breathe without using your phone or receiving any notifications. Think before you act. Not every viewpoint is worthy of a reply. Give up trying to be understood. No one needs to know why you're at peace. Keep your time safe. Sleeping is soul maintenance, not idleness. When you learn to live in peace, you'll discover that the noise gets less powerful. The takeaway: perfection does not lead to peace. Acceptance of others, of yourself, and of the things beyond your control is where it can be discovered. Trying to please everyone can never bring you peace because their demands are limitless. When you begin to live in harmony with your truth, however, in a quiet, kind, and consistent manner, you will experience serenity. The outside world may not always understand your tranquility. It's all right. Never was it for them. Concluding thoughts, series last words. You've devoted a significant portion of your life to attempting to please everyone. However, the reality is that you were always supposed to be your response, not everyone else's. Stop chasing the waning applause, then. Quit trying to explain your tranquility to others who enjoy making noise. And begin paying respect to the silent voice that has always been there, the one that says, "I am this person." And that's sufficient. I appreciate you coming along with me at Wisdom Words on this trip. If this message resonated with you, stop and recognize how far you've come. Learning to stop trying to please everyone is the first step towards liberation, not just a brave gesture.